space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. So we have a little bit of a different format today. I have a friend here from St. Louis that I actually just met during the eclipse. We drove down and saw the path or to the path of totality with our friend Lily Nova, who's many of you may know. And we got to talking, and I told him we were researching for a webinar, Illuminati in the music industry. And it turns out that he actually is in the music industry somewhat. And he is a songwriter, producer, keyboardist, but he didn't sell his soul. So don't worry.
That's right.
And he started telling me some stories. He started telling me some stories, and he has a lot of interesting information about what happens there and some of the stuff behind the scenes. And we're going to get into a lot of really interesting stuff. And I'm excited to have him on the show. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you all that tickets are still available for the conference. Live stream passes are still available for $88, rebelsofdisclosure.com. And if you can make it out in person, there's still room. And those tickets, we have 4-day passes and 1-day passes available. So take advantage of that. We can't wait to see you there. It is right around the corner, and it's going to be amazing. We're super excited about it. So welcome to the show, Ryan Marquez. I don't even know if I introduced you yet. So,
yeah, thanks for having me, Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for our audience who doesn't know, and for us who don't know, because I was telling you off camera, usually I'm able to research my guest and kind of know a little bit about them, but I'm actually excited about this because I'm going to be learning with the audience everything that you're going to be sharing with us. So if you want to just let our audience know kind of how you got into the music industry, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you said, like music is pretty much my whole life, and I've been in music ever since I was a kid. I have been playing piano since I was about 5 and grew up playing in all kinds of bands, and really lived in Kansas City. So I got a strong tradition in jazz and blues, and moved to St. Louis to study jazz piano, and really have influenced by the Mississippi River and the great tradition of the blues and the soul and the jazz, that's come up and down the river. And I have been creating all kinds of music, primarily in the jazz, pop, and hip hop genres for, about my whole life. I've always been a songwriter, and I've always been trying to figure out ways to put together bands and to, produce music. And that's thankfully turned into a full-time, lifestyle for me, where I'm able to, travel the world and to be able to like make tracks with my friends and, play shows with all kinds of amazing musicians.
Right. Yeah. And that's amazing. It's amazing to find a way to make it doing what you love right now, knowing what the music industry is, and knowing that the big names only make it when they really do sign that contract and sell their soul and basically give all their creative abilities to some or creative
freedom, really.
Freedom. There you go.
All general period.
Yeah. They give all
sell their soul to that to get that big. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's really interesting because, music is this intangible force, and we know, like, based on science, that the nature of matter is frequency and vibration, and that frequency and vibration is a sound. So sound being a fundamental building block, it has a lot of influence and power in the ability to manipulate, the material world, and influence people's actions and influence people's, thoughts and their words and their habits and their rituals. And so with that kind of precedent, I've really been charged with trying to understand the great questions of life, like, why are we here? What does this mean? Like, what is time? Like, where are, all the ancient sites and things, like, how do these make sense with what I'm being told? And, I think, like, when you look at it through the lens of sound, there's a really it's a really different perspective because you're dealing with the sonic sphere, and the sonic sphere is like this intangible place, you know, versus like the physical reality where you might see like, you know, symbols or, you know, visual art that might be representative. But in the music industry, a lot of the hooking is you utilized, you know, by creating intentions through music that they place in, you know, different beats and different genres that specifically can like program people to
Oh yeah.
live out, you know, these ideals, and also purchase products that get intentionally advertised in like the mainstream music. And so, you know, like growing up, I was like always a really spiritual person, and like the nature of like, you know, divinity or like isness or oneness, like unity has always been something that really has inspired and charged like my motivations to really like examine the reality, you know, to challenge, you know, institutions like religion or education or the healthcare system or the government, you know, much like you guys. And that's brought me into obviously a place like of home base with music, and just knowing that like just like any other industry, you know, there's kind of a dark force or a certain type of energy that's perpetuated that is commonly utilizing symbolism and business practices and secretness and occultism to
Hmm.
basically like control an industry, but more than even control the industry, because obviously like it's always has a lot to do with the money, but mostly it has to do with controlling the people, you know, and the artistry of the musicians who've like come and gone throughout the, you know, throughout the history of music. Like you'll always kind of find this thing where it's like the musicians are always like really talented, but then they kind of reach this place in their business career where they can go like kind of go from just being like playing local clubs or like touring regionally to like being a superstar. And a lot of times that does kind of come with like what you guys were talking about, like maybe selling out or selling your soul a little bit, where you basically do kind of like a lot of times the artists, especially the older artists, would sign over the rights to their songs, like the masters and the publishing, and they might only get a certain percentage of the songwriting, even though they wrote the entire song. So at the end of the day, they're like not making any money. And a lot of times, I know this is one big thing in the music industry. A real, conspiracy is this thing called the death clause. Have you guys heard about that?
Um, Potentially,
Not,
but Phyllis, enlighten us.
yeah, not that term at least.
So the death clause, there's if you look up the death clause, we'll find a link like to this really great documentary about it that I've watched a couple of times. But there is basically the ability for the record label to do this crazy thing where they can take out an insurance policy on an artist. So when you sign your name on a contract, you're basically signing a thing that says if anything ever happens to me, like the insurance, like the record company collect an insurance policy on me.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times what happens is the artist becomes to a point in their career where maybe they are not selling as much records, or they're kind of like past their prime, and they're in this
Yep.
awkward position where from a business standpoint, like it might be more beneficial if they were dead. And so the record companies are kind of being accused of and different, you know, different players and for different reasons, for different motives, and all kinds of celebrities, you know, are being accused of being intentionally killed and then having it faked as a drug overdose or a
Yeah.
suicide, you know, and it's people whose names you've heard, people like Jimi Hendrix, people like Kurt Cobain, people like Michael Jackson, people like Prince, people like Whitney Houston, you know,
Hmm.
and you
Chris
know,
Cornell. Yeah, let me go down the list. Like, and there's so many of them that
Tupac,
you
Biggie.
look when you look into the details of like what they were doing right before they died, what they were talking about, right, the details of their death. I mean, it looks like it's pretty obvious to me that a lot of these they were, and a lot of times they were like trying to come out about the dark stuff,
Right.
and then they were taken out, or they already started coming out about it, and they were taken out, and it's like even in like a ritualistic way, you know, like on even on the date they were taken out, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I've
so
heard.
yeah, there's definitely like a cult. Like it's all like the occult forces. There's occult doesn't mean good, or occult just means hidden, and it's like
Hidden,
hidden
right?
knowledge, power, because knowledge is power. But the dark forces use that power, use that for power over others, and that's what, and they use it in a dark way, you could say. And they're the ones,
Totally.
you know, like you said, especially the music industry, it's so powerful because the frequency can you can like control people so
It
easily.
literally manipulates physical space, so it has an
Right.
effect on our physical body. And
So of
then,
course
like,
they want to control that. Of course they're gonna get to the top of that industry and control that, right?
Right.
So
yeah, and that industry is like basically controlled by an oligarchy. You know, it's like a handful of companies that's like the majors is what they call them, you know. And
mm,
it's like three companies basically own all of the little independent labels, like the smaller labels, like
mm,
subsidiaries of these larger ones. And then you have your independent labels, but and there's a whole bunch of them, but they don't really make up a large percent of the financial part of the market. Although it has grown, you know,
mhm.
since its inception, but it's still pretty much owned by a few record companies, or a few companies, I should say, because you know it's like you know, Sony and Universal,
In Colombia.
Columbia.
Right.
Like there's there's also just like there's so much power in the ability to program the lyrics, you know, that it's also kind of, I always think about this, like we have the FDA, right? And so allegedly they're supposed to like monitor substances and make sure that it's not going to harm people and have research and clinical studies, right? That's why I said allegedly.
Supposed to do
Supposed
that.
to, right? And so and then in the music industry, there's like the FEC, the FCC, right?
Mhm.
And they are supposed to control like, you know, what people can hear and what, but they don't really take into effect. Like you probably haven't seen a lot of studies about like what type of music, what type of effects people have had from listening to like what type of different types of music and how that might have manifested as symptoms of complications, because most of the time music kind of deals in the spiritual realm, and doctors don't really do a good job at like dealing with the spiritual realm, because they'll tell you like, oh well, your spirituality, that you need to go talk to the reverend or the pastor or the rabbi or the monk, or you know, or
Hmm.
the nun or somebody, and you know, that's like a different, the guru, that's a different thing. But really it's like, you know, your health and your wellness is all tied into your mind, body, and your spirit, and the spirit being, you know, kind of the foundational building block for the other two, because if you don't have the spirit, then it doesn't matter if you have a mind or a body, because it's not going to be, everybody's seen a body that didn't have a spirit in it,
Right.
you know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're 100% right. And I never really considered the FCC part of it. But going back to what you said about the death clause, I have heard about that once you started talking about it, and it makes perfect sense. And I think there's probably even people kind of blowing the whistle on that now.
definitely
And yeah, so if it makes more sense for you just take out the middleman, like, wow, if we get rid of them, we collect all
all
the
the money.
profit,
Yeah.
all the benefits.
Because
And
they don't view those people as people. They view them as assets,
right,
as just
Exactly.
pawns to be used for their system and for what they can get out of you. They don't care about the people. They don't care about the music. They don't care about anything other than that. So of course,
Totally,
if they're
man.
like, "Hey, we're not making as much money on you as we could make way more if we just killed you, made it look like a suicide or an accident."
Well, the thing is
Yeah, they're gonna.
they need you at first
They need
to
you at
produce
first,
the music, and
right?
then but he, like you said, once you start dwindling away, like you start
Yeah, there's
losing.
like this little kind of
Yeah,
awkward phase where you've kind of like ran your, big the peak of where you are, and then it's
you
like,
run
well,
your course,
to boost sales, like
right?
would die. Like it's like kind of messed up. But if you watch this documentary, I think it's just called The Death Clause, and it's actually I think on YouTube or whatever. But I watched it, and they had all kinds of examples of all kinds of artists in pretty much every genre, and like when you if you've ever there's like this good documentary called The Black Godfather, and it's about like Charles Avant, and he like was a part of kind of helping set up like the entire industry specifically for like black artists, but he learned the industry from hanging out with like all these old school record label execs from like 1920s and 1910s, right? And so literally in the documentary he's hanging out with Quincy Jones, and they're joking about the first time that he took Quincy over to the record label, and he's like, remember that time you took me over and then they had that guy and they were hanging him out the window and I was all scared and I was like, what's going on over here? And you looked at me and you're like, oh man, they're just negotiating Jackie Wilson's new contract. Like, don't worry about it. And like they're literally holding him out a
Right.
window.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's a lot of times that's how they do it. In, you like they'll tell you like you signed this contract or
Yeah.
like
Well, and now
It's a mafia. That's what it is.
mafia.
right.
It's
Totally
a type
is.
of mafia. Yeah.
And but nowadays it's done with sexual blackmail. And they might still hang people out the
Unfortunately.
windows, but unfortunately, they drug you and you don't even know what you're doing, and they play the film for you in the morning and say, hey, if you don't basically do what we tell you, we're going to show this to the
Mm.
public.
There's like I mean, that's like mainstream, right? It's like all that Puff Daddy stuff that's like hitting the news, that's kind of following on the trails of all the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. And it's kind of just crazy that like in a world where like we're supposed to be in a free press and an open media where we could talk about like, stuff that's like prevalent or whatever, and nobody's even talking about this whole create this whole smoking gun, and everybody's like, oh, there's nothing to see here.
Right.
Oh, look over
Right.
here. Be mad
Right.
at this
Right.
person. Be mad at this issue.
Right.
So
Here's your distraction away from that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so you
Don't look
mentioned off camera that you went to the Grammys, right?
Yeah.
And you told me about a ceremony that takes place off camera. They have two ceremonies. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's actually I didn't really know it either, and this was the first year I went to the Grammys, and there's actually two ceremonies. One ceremony happens in the Peacock Theater, and it starts at like 11 o'clock in the morning, and it goes all the way to like 4 o'clock, and it has uh all the other awards that aren't televised. So and it's genres that are like, blues and jazz and world music and singer-songwriter and, maybe like more rock genres or
The actual good music.
the actual good
Yeah.
music.
Yeah. And the actual good music.
The actual good musicians who can actually for real play, like the instruments, and what you see is like they had a live band on stage that played all the ins and the outs, and it was all these like super killing LA studio musicians who played with everybody and are the dudes and the gals, and and it's like the thing about it was the performances were all people with real instruments in their hands. Like the mic was live, and there was all, there were people like Joni Mitchell and Jacob Collier and Kirk Franklin and Robert Glasper and Terrace Martin and Bob James. And there was like just way more of a concentration of an energy on actual musicianship. You know what I'm saying? Like actual, like skillful, tasteful, beautiful, spiritually, lovingly charged music. And when these artists were winning the awards, they were going up and saying things like, music has the power to change the world. And I thank you so much to the higher power for giving us the gift of music. And may we all come together as one in the name of love and peace, everybody. And they were, that was like the gist of everybody's kind of banter when they would win. You know, this one's for the art, this one's for the artists. All the artists out there who are like trying to make their music, like you can do it too, you know. And then like, okay, so that was so great, right? We saw gospel music, we saw jazz music, we saw some of the greatest musicians that ever lived, you know. And in the other ceremony we did too. But the second ceremony is the one that gets televised. That happens in it used to be called Staples Center. I don't know if it still is. It might be called Crypto Center.
Yeah, they just changed the name.
Yeah, I think it's the Crypto Center now with a Lakers play. And it happens in there, and it's this huge like stadium event. And when you go in there, the energy is like way different. Well, obviously because the venue's different, you know, it's going to be a little different, but they got more capability. So, you know, it's way more concentrated on like the pyrotechnics and the light show and the smoke and the like dancing and the costumes. Yeah, the rituals, like totally.
Yeah.
And but
Yeah.
even inside of that ceremony, there was still kind of two energies, like kind of like fluid in it, and you could clearly see like, you know, Stevie Wonder would come out and sing a song with like the orchestra, and it would be like, you know, with Tony Bennett like recorded voice, and be like, oh wow, that was really good. They sang For Once in My Life. That was both of their songs. That was really cool, you know. Or like Tracy Chapman came out and sang Fast Car, you know, with the country guy whose name I'm forgetting right now. But they did a like, you know, it was more about like that kind of vibe. But then there'd be these other artists that would come out, and it would be like they would be like doing stuff. It'd be all about the dance show. It'd be all about the lights. It'd be all, you know, and the energy would change. Like, and there'd be fire, and it'd be like, you know, really like risque kind of costumes and like provocative dance moves, and you know, and
they literally thank the devil too. Like I've heard,
yeah,
like they praise Satan sometimes.
Sometimes they definitely do.
Reward.
In the VMAs, I think of 2009, you can see a video of Jack Black, like, so everybody hold hands. We're all gonna pray to the devil now, and it's like, it seems like it's funny, but it's like maybe it is funny, but whoever's writing the script, you know what I'm saying? I think there's like an underlying current of there is like a, you know, I like there isn't a kind of a lot of occult symbolism, you know, that seems to also coincide with the same symbolism that's being used in other industries,
right?
And in you know, by these different groups or different secret societies that really aren't even that secret, you know, because as you guys know, like black magic or whatever, or like just like the spell or whatever they can kind of put on people, like you can't do that without like showing people the truth too. Like they have to make the conscious choice to like kind of believe in the illusion of the darkness, that, and then that's, you know, because at the end of the day we all have free will still, you know, to kind of choose that.
It doesn't work. It actually does. That's a part of the magic. They have to show you and tell you what they're doing.
Totally.
They call it, there's even a term, it's called revelation of the method. So even if they don't overtly tell you, they have to in some way tell you or show you exactly what they're doing. And that's why everywhere you look, you see them telling you in plain sight. If you have the eyes to see it, it becomes very obvious. It's all over the place. You're like, oh, they're just blatantly putting it out there what they're doing. But everyone's been so programmed to not understand this stuff, or not, you know, believe in it or think it's really happening or any of it, that people, and you know, so to put it simply, the lower your state of consciousness and the more asleep you are, the more susceptible you are to this stuff. And that's why they want to keep everyone very asleep, very low level consciousness, very addicted to money, sex, and power and fame and things like that.
I always say that like
got you.
Like the music, sorry not to cut you off. The music industry, like the mainstream music, is predicated kind of inside of this, like, you know, reptilian brain, you know what I'm saying, of the fight, flight, or like, I don't know if you all swear on here.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Or like fight, flight, or fuck. You know what I'm saying? Like those are the three topics of the mainstream industry. Like either we're doing a song like it's like I'm break up, I feel so far from you, or I'm so lost inside of myself, I'm so alone, right? That's the flight. There's the fight, there's like the violent songs, the songs that are like you know, like F the police, or like, you know, like just kind of like bringing that energy, you know. And then there's the songs that are all just about love, like in the club, and they're derogatory. They're not even like tasteful. Like back in the day, it's like, you know, if you're gonna write a love song and you're trying to like be smooth on like a girl or something, you're trying to like say it, you're gonna say it all sweet, like, you know, like. But now it's just like, you know, you got songs winning Song of the Year called WAP. You know what I'm talking about? Like talking about this is the best song. This is literally the best song out of all the songs that was written this year.
Right.
This is the best one. This is the one that we should be celebrating on TV in front of everybody. Right. So you know what I'm saying? Like, what?
So those are the songs, in my opinion, are the ones that have the underlying message and the tones and the frequencies that are mind controlling and programming people. It's a terrible song, and we all know it's terrible, but it's still catchy somehow. And we're still like, you still, you know, find yourself singing it and humming it in your head. And also, it might have what you were telling me about the backtracking as well, like
backmasking.
Backmasking. I'm sorry, backmasking. And so what that is, I guess, do you want to explain what that is?
That, well, like, it was subliminal.
Exactly, Aaron. Yeah. It was kind of this idea that they were putting subliminal messages or backwards messages. And some artists like definitely intentionally did and open-handedly said that they've done it, like the Beatles, you know. They've reversed things. You know, but the interesting thing is like I forget like what year it was, but it was like at some point in the at some point they started manufacturing record players that could play things backwards. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why would they even do that?
What's interesting too is I think, you know, the whole Stairway to Heaven thing in Led Zeppelin, if you play it in reverse, it, you know, says Satan over and over and 666 and a bunch of number of things like that are negative that are opposing the message. But I wonder, there is a thing called reverse speech, right?
Yeah.
So when you like it's all subconscious at that point. So the artist might not even realize what their true intention is behind the lyrics, and the reverse speech kind of tells on yourself, you know.
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. Like there was a CIA program or whatever that they did where they studied people's answers to questions, and then like regardless of what answers they gave, they took their answers and played them backwards, and then when they listened back, they could tell, like maybe pick out words that were giving hints to like if the person was telling the truth or not, or like what the real information was. It was like a whole investigation that was like done into that.
There was a ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. They had a song called Fire on High. It was instrumental, but at the very beginning, it had almost like it sounded like this demonic voice, and it was played in reverse, and it sounded super demonic. But all it said was, "This is what it sounds like when you play this backwards." Like that's what it said, and but they just reversed it, and everybody thought it was some satanic message. So
and there definitely, I think, is levels of that where like we're programmed to hear words and see faces. You know what I mean? So it's like we do have to like kind of have some discernment and some discrepancy. But in cases like, you know, of the Beatles, like I think you have an entity that's so corporate, you know what I mean, that they're actually, as artists, not even in control of a lot of, they're being told like, wear this, go here, say. And then that's when you saw them, they started resisting it, and they started being like, we don't want to be the Beatles anymore, you know?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the hit songs, and I've done research, and there's a lot of evidence that they are not written by the artist. They're handed certain songs. They're saying, you're going to record this song and you're going to play the song, and this is going to be a hit. This is going to be one of your hit, you know, because like, as we're talking about, the lyrics of the song, the way it's written, like it's all ritualistic is like an energy harvesting thing. Right. So they're like, they construct this like really nice like spell of a song basically, and then they hand it to the person. They go, here's your song. You already signed the contract. You're locked in. You're forced to. Who was it that like said that? So Kesha, if you remember her, I don't know if she's not like popular anymore, but like,
yeah, I remember.
She had a song called Die Young that was about dying young. Like, and then right after the song comes out, Sandy Hook happens in 2012. And that's intentional. That wasn't a coincidence. They set it up that way. But then she comes out and everyone's like attacking her, you Illuminati bitch, blah, 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 and she comes out and says, I did not write that song. I was forced to sing it. I was forced to do this music video. She said this. And then she also claimed she was raped by her producer and was like getting all, so like a lot of these people, it's like they don't know what they're getting themselves into when they sign these contracts. They're baited into it. I mean, they want the fame, they want the money, they want the success, and that's the trap. And then they sign the contract, and then they're stuck in it, and then they're forced to do these types of songs and these different rituals and all these things.
Oh, yeah,
like you got like the Travis Scott concert, which was like a straight up, like every single aspect of that was like a satanic ritual. It was insane. And even there was like a video, you could see this entity like jumping into somebody from the stage, like you can see it on the video even.
That's crazy.
Dude, it's a wild video. Yeah.
So all this stuff is going on, and a lot of these songs are not they're not written by the people themselves.
Totally, man. And that makes me think about like the just kind of like factory of like the Disney factory, where they kind of got like the Mickey Mouse Club, where it was like in the 90s, they literally like farmed all the pop stars like since they were kids, you know what I mean? And then you had like a Christina Aguilera and a Britney Spears and a Justin Timberlake, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All kind of popping up, and then it's like, in the case of like a Britney Spears or something, like literally she's like was like imprisoned by her dad who like stole her money, you know what I mean?
Right.
And she's like, she tried to cut all her hair off. Everyone thought she was crazy, and it was like she was probably having a mental breakdown because all this like crazy stuff was happening. She just wanted to sing her songs,
Right.
And she wanted out, and she was going crazy because of
and it's MK Ultra too. Like they're actually they're put under mind control, and who knows what actually happened.
And dude, like I know Kanye talked about like how they try to get you on the pills or whatever, and then like some people say that's even how they got Prince, because Prince, or even MJ, it's like
Michael Jackson
have a drug addiction already. Like, or even Kurt Cobain, it's like if you already have a drug addiction, then that's going to be a lot easier for them to make it look like that's what got you, and then everyone will be like, yeah, they did do that, so that I guess that's what happened.
So
I think they took Kurt Cobain out. I don't think that was a
suicide. 100%. Have you guys seen Soaked in Bleach, the documentary?
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah,
that's exactly. I mean, open and shut case to me.
Right.
Oh yeah, totally.
So you were telling me about this guy, John Todd. He's an Illuminati whistleblower who was exposing the music industry and some of the darker stuff that goes on, and like the back rooms in the studios and stuff where they do rituals. Can you kind of share a little bit of what you know about that?
Oh yeah, this guy, I first heard about him, I think in like the early 2000s, and he was coming out. I think he came out as saying that he, was a part of the Illuminati and that he participated in rituals and was a part of the music industry, like on the business side of things, where he participated in these black magic rituals and was aware that there were certain rooms in the record companies where there were like, praying over the masters, and they were like doing these different
they were doing like witchcraft and occult rituals on the masters and like his words, he was saying they were infusing demons into the music, that anyone who listened to it would like attach themselves to that energy, or the demons would like follow every single person that from
and that's kind of what he was saying, is just that like
that's what he was saying.
That's literally what he was saying, and he was just kind of exposing all the different craziness about the industry. But then it was like he came out saying that stuff, and I think he was kind of coming from like a Christian perspective, so he went
the extreme Christian, like, because he grew up in that Illuminati bloodline family. and then he was like powerfully, awakened and escaped it. But then he went the other extreme, the super dogmatic Christian, which is what a lot of people do. It's understandable.
And he ultimately, I think, like went and toured different churches, like trying to share with people about the exposing of the Illuminati. And that's a whole nother thing, man. Because like in Christian culture, like in the like institutionalized kind of information that they'll give you that's like cultural more than doctrinal,
Right.
like a lot of times that stuff is in there. Like when I was a kid, like I found out about the NWO and the Illuminati and like all microchipping and all this stuff. Like I found out that stuff from from as a kid, from looking at books like Left Behind series or like A Thief in the Night, or like like there'd be like these videos that would pop up that would come on like this station or something, and you'd be like, what is this? You know what I mean? So it's like I think there is some good like awareness like of that information happening. Like as anything, you always got to kind of like look at corporate biases, or like kind of be discerning in like who's saying what and why they might be saying that.
Right.
Yeah. So another thing I want to talk about, and this is going to kind of shift gears a little bit, but we're going to talk about some local stuff here in St. Louis that you made me aware of a group called the Veiled Prophets, or the Veiled Prophet. And it's like a secret society here in St. Louis where I didn't know, like I understand the Freemason and the Knights Templar history of St. Louis, but I didn't really know about the Veiled Prophet. And maybe if you could just like lay it out for us and our audience what it is and what's actually going on there, because it's fascinating and kind of disturbing at the same time.
Yeah, like you nailed it, man. It's an interesting thing, like that when you're like studying this stuff, you're like learning about all these different topics and subject matter, and you're like, how does this apply to my life or whatever? And then you kind of like discover that I think to some degree this kind of thing is happening in probably every major city. But the Veil Prophet is basically like a non-for-profit that kind of does a lot of charity work in the community, or puts on primarily this festival called the VP Fair, which is a annual festival that's happened since I think the late 1800s, and it's changed a lot through the years. In its current state, they synced it up with 4th of July. So a lot of times, if you've ever been to the concerts down on the landing, or like down the Archfront grounds,
right.
Like that's the VP. That's them putting it on, and they're a charity organization that does community service like and stuff like that. They have a annual ball, debutante ball that is what was like internationally famous, and people would travel from all over to like come to this. Like in the early 1800s, like this was like a huge deal. Like they actually built the Stifle Theater so that people could come to this event. And the debutante ball is basically just like a coming age event, where a community of people present the females of age and present them as being eligible to be married. It's like an old ritual or custom, and they've carried on that tradition, and they published the photos in the Ladue News. So if you want to see any pictures of like what I'm talking about, it's all, as we were talking about, Aaron, it's all in the open. Everything is open-handed, so they're not really hiding what they're doing or what they are. They're very much like publishing the pictures. When you look at the pictures, when you look at their costuming and things, it's kind of like a cross between like Catholicism and like like Tartaria, like kind of like Arabic kind of vibes, like hats with and tassels and fuzzy things and swords. and like symbols that you might find in other, like, you know, being a musician, you play in all kinds of event spaces, so you see something you might see in like a temple, like like a Freemason temple, or
So,
Yeah.
so what's the actual, okay, they have this ball, but what's the nefarious side of it? Because so far you told us it's
yes,
dirty and
yeah.
yeah.
So basically, like, they kind of are an oligarchy of wealth, that has really intentionally kind of set up St. Louis and run a lot of and govern a lot of the politics and a lot of the business decisions. They are the like a lot of the main corporations that you've heard of. Um, I actually had the opportunity to score a play that came out last year by this non-for-profit arts organization called Action Arts STL. And they did a play called Action, which was based on this event that happened in 1968 by this civil rights activist from St. Louis named Percy Green. Percy Green is like a world famous civil rights activist. He's most known for scaling the arch and protest of hiring black workers. And there's like a famous picture of him up on the arch, and he scaled it with another person. And then he also took McDonnell Douglas all the way to the Supreme Court and fighting them on being fired for racial motivation. And so he organized a group of people to basically infiltrate the ball, because at the time they didn't allow black people into the society. It was a very elite society, and even more than not allowing, like, people of color into their club or whatever. It was just mostly like wealth oriented, like this certain families and certain business ties that you got to have to really like be in the club. And it's kind of like taboo, like, it's like you can kind of see like the outskirts of like what they're doing or what they're presenting is like maybe just interesting or questionable, like when you look at the pictures. This man, there's a man who is the veil prophet, and he is charged with the responsibility of picking out who the belle of the ball is, which is called the Queen of Love and Beauty. And they pick a Queen of Love and Beauty out every year, and they have for like 120 years. And this man then dresses up in a outfit that looks similar to like the Pope. And everything I'm saying, you can look in the Do News like articles and see all these pictures, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And this man who's dressed up kind of like the Pope has a veil over his face, and he's like the person in the non-for-profit who donated the most money and that year. So, and it always changes. Maybe somebody can be it more than once. I don't know. But I know that it always changes, and that the first one was revealed as to be the chief of police. So the that was back in the 1800s. And it's changed a lot since then. It used to be, like, from what I hear, it used to be kind of like a lot more violent, and they would parade it all through town. And they dress up, they've been accused as dressing up like the kind of like the Ku Klux Klan and terrorizing black neighborhoods. Like early
Right.
on. They've, since the organization has done everything they can to try to disenfranchise from that, or to try to PR damage control that. But it got so there's a couple things I want to say about this. I'm trying not to get distracted, but this guy Percy Green, he organized a meeting to basically get the tickets to the ball, and he had a couple white members of the action group go in, and they created a distraction where one of the ladies uh threw pamphlets off the balcony, and then another one jumped into the stage like from the balcony and like ran up on the veil prophet and like ripped his mask off. And like it was a huge thing. Everybody was like, so, like what is going on, And so they ripped his mask off, and like who would you guess it would be?
No, tell us.
It was the president of Monsanto.
Oh,
And
of course.
yeah, of course. Of course.
Of course it is.
It was the president of Monsanto. And so, meanwhile, Percy Green was outside and other activists were outside, protesting on the streets, like trying to get it into the ball. Like they created like the black VP, and they were trying to like, there was just a lot of distractions. And so they ended up arresting the lady who ran and pulled the mask. And it was like a it was like a big deal, but guess what? They didn't write about it in the papers.
right.
So nobody knew that it happened because the Veil Prophet, like according to Percy Green, the Veil Prophet they own everything. Like they own the newspapers. And so they didn't press no charges. They didn't want any paper trail. They just dismissed it like nothing happened. And so 50 years later, this arts organization made a play about it. And I think there'll be more runs of it in the future, but it's definitely like it's definitely a crazy thing, and there's a lot of layers to it.
So what happens when somebody is chosen as the queen of love and beauty or whatever?
That's a good question. Well, I'm not gonna make any harsh accusations, but I'll just ask questions. And I'll just say that like if you donate a lot of money to an organization to pick out like a woman in a pageant of, let's say, beauty or of age or of upcoming, what would be the purpose, or what would be the intention for hiding your face? Like why would that be necessary? Like, or what's the purpose, or like why is that a part of the ritual? So I don't know what they do exactly. Like, I'm not going to say it, but I will pose the question, why would someone pay a lot of money to a non-for-profit to have the opportunity to pick out somebody from, the opposite sex who's of age, and why would they feel the need to hide their face? Like, I'm not going to say
Right.
anything other than like, I just think that's a legitimate question if you look at the pictures. Like,
Yeah. So, and
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, it's almost kind of like, and I think the dresses are like they're wearing like $100,000-$200,000 dresses. They're all like dressing up.
they're
Yeah.
dressing up. Ellie Kemper, if you've seen The Office, like she was Erin on The Office, and
Yeah.
she also had another successful show on Netflix. But she was actually the Queen of Love and Beauty,
Really?
10, 15 years ago. And yeah, and it was like a huge thing that came out because yeah, if you look up news articles or whatever, you can find like little things where like little things will pop up here and there, and it'll be like secret society, the veiled prophet, and then like Ellie, Kemper or whatever name got attached to it because there's pictures of her dressed up hanging out with the prophet. You know what I mean? And like
Are they like a subsect of Freemasonry, or are they a whole separate thing? Or is
I
there any
can't be
relation?
100% sure what if they're attached to Freemasonry. I know that like they seem like they might be their own thing. Like it might be just like a St. Louis thing. Like, because I
Yeah.
don't know of it really
I never
outside
really
of it
looked
anywhere else. And when you look at St. Louis, though, I will say when you do look at St. Louis, a lot of people kind of sleep on St. Louis, but like there's a lot of really valuable assets in our region. As you guys know, the Cahokia Mounds, this was
Oh,
Mountain
yeah.
City. There was a lot of ancient structures here that were destroyed and that are intentionally, most likely, there's structures in those mounds, in the Cahokia Mounds.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're kind of like hiding the fact that there's ancient structures in our backyard, and we live in Egypt. we live like in ancient Egypt, being in St. Louis, being in Illinois, being right here. This is the largest
Right.
populated area. You know what I mean? There's so
Yeah,
much history that was destroyed here intentionally.
we
And
did a
it's
whole documentary. We did a whole
yeah, I know
documentary.
you guys
Yeah.
smashed it. You guys are like the
Oh,
dudes.
thank
But
you.
so,
Yeah, you guys know.
but
But
what
Yeah,
you're right.
you're
You're
absolutely
right
right.
about that. For one, going back to the veiled prophet, it does surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that it was the chief of police and the president of Monsanto and who knows who else it's been, but that tells you. So it's not even just at a governmental level, right? This goes down to the city level, and every city has likely. I know Dallas, Texas, does have a kind of like a veiled prophet type of ball, the same thing. I think other cities do
yeah,
too.
debutante balls is definitely not exclusive to St. Louis or to this like
Right.
this group or whatever.
So that would be kind of how it's like they're maybe at the lower side of the ladder, but it makes sense that the puppet masters can't control everything. So they need people in each city, groups in each city doing pulling all the strings. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on there.
Yeah, and I, you know, in the case of like, you know, the play and stuff, I was like, you know, I know it's like every theater house in town is like owned by donated money to, I mean, I should say by people who are in this thing. So it's like when you have the power to, it's just like government, right? When you have the power to like donate money and stuff, then you kind of have a say so of like what should or shouldn't go on in that place. So you can kind of have like direct control of the social landscape and of the economical landscape of the musical landscape, you know.
And the police force, I mean,
Yeah.
so you said the Stifle Theater, that's where they held the ball?
Yeah, the Stifle Theater was built like, and this is what I learned at the History Museum. Like, you like this stuff is all out in the open. Like everything that I said is what I learned from like going to the History Museum and looking in Ladue News and reading the articles that are like out in the public as fact.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So what's interesting is when I was in construction, our company remodeled. It used to be the Peabody Opera House, and I think it originally was stifled, and it went to Peabody, and it's back to stifle again. But we remodeled it, and back then I was completely asleep. I wasn't paying attention, but I wish I would have been when we were in that building. You know, because we have when you're doing construction, you have access to everything underneath the Union
Yeah.
Station. We found, you know, tunnel entrances to speakeasies, and there's an underground tunnel network in
Oh
St.
yeah.
Louis. And
Oh yeah.
somebody just shared a video online about allegedly when they were building one of the bridges, which I haven't done any research on this. I don't know if it's true, but when they were building one of the bridges and digging the pylons, they blew through underground into an underground city, basically, where there was archways and streets and fountains and all kinds of stuff. We've never heard about anything like that.
Yeah.
So who knows what's actually happening underground? You know, we're talking about the
Dude,
Cahokia Mounds and everything, but
you're right.
yeah, there's something here that's far more
And
significant.
like the Ozarks and stuff too. Like yeah, you know that with the limestone caves that Missouri has. Like I think Missouri is like one of the most slept on spots, you know what I
It
mean? But
is.
it's like when
It
you
really
actually
is.
look at it,
It's
there's a
super
lot
slept
of
on.
valuable resources that are running and operations that are running out of, you know what I mean? Like Boeing is here, like Wells
Yeah.
Fargo, like
The
Well,
Scottrade, like, you know.
Missouri, I've always thought like it gets lost in the mix because it's a Midwestern state and everyone outside of the Midwest thinks it's just like flat farmland like Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa and even most of Illinois, or it's just like Chicago and then like a whole bunch of farmland and other cities. But like Missouri is like a beautiful state and there's like you said, there's cave systems, there's all this beauty and the Ozarks and um there's and just like all this other stuff going on here, like Cahokia and all this other
Right.
stuff. You're right; it's super slept on. It's like I've seen a bunch of people who like come to either St. Louis or Kansas City or somewhere else in Missouri, and they're like, "Oh shit, this is actually like a really cool place,"
Yeah.
right.
and they had no idea, because no
That's
one talks about it other than
right.
What what's interesting though is about like I guess the Ozarks has the Bagnell Dam, and we know the
Mhm.
history of dams, and there could be a
Yeah.
nefarious purpose for that. Well, for one,
Yeah.
every dam is like ultimately you're cutting off the natural flow of the water, and you're creating disharmony on the planet every time you build a dam, and
Yeah.
you're
Absolutely.
flooding areas and starving other areas. Either way, so
Yeah.
there's that, but then there's a place in the Ozarks called Ha Ha Tonka. It's a state
Oh
park.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
there was a millionaire basically I think in the late 1800s, early 1900s, who had built a castle on that land, a castle, a guest house, and a watchtower. And during the construction, I think they built I think maybe it was after the construction. Either way, they caught fire. So all three of them, they're stone buildings, right, with like maybe wood subfloors. The castle caught fire, the watchtower caught fire, and the guest house, but all three at different times. But it was to the point where they couldn't rebuild. And so the government, after the fire, the government came in and bought it out and turned it into a hotel. And then the hotel burned down, and then they shut it down, and it was on top of a cave system. And after they shut down the hotel, they closed down, they cut off access to the cave system below. They wanted that land
Mm,
for whatever reason, they wanted that land. They cut off access to the caves. They burned this guy's property down,
mm.
stole it from him, basically. And that just tells me that there's something far more significant underground there in the Ozarks than,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Oh,
most likely a deep underground military base. Yeah.
definitely.
there's a ton of retired military that live in the Ozarks, in the Ozark Mountains, particularly in Missouri. Um, like I've heard people talk about this. They're like they because it's like a safe zone in case there's some kind of cataclysm or like
Yeah.
also I think it's also because there's a lot going on there that, you know, like you just said.
But well, you guys know about the $1 billion complex that's registered as a residence?
I don't think
There's
so.
like this you guys remember that show that Jesse Ventura had like a while, like
Yeah, yeah.
10 years, 15, 20 years ago or something?
I remember.
But he did this show and he did a whole episode on the Ozarks, and he showed this house, like that's a house. I say that, but it was like this huge $1 billion complex that was run by a technology company, and they were trying to like get close to it, and then they were asking like locals some questions and stuff, and everybody were like nobody wanted to talk about it. They were like couldn't get anyone to officially like give them a statement, and then every time they try to get on the property there would be, security guards that would come up and be like, yo man, you guys got to go, or like, they got guns, you know like so but it also, I know that in Kansas City, like, and you can buy commercial residence. Like, there's actually places that already you operate underground, like storage units. There's like businesses and people living. There's a whole community of of operation that's already happening in these caves, and that's just like the stuff that we know about. You
Right.
know what I
Right.
mean? And
Right.
I heard, and I remember seeing these videos on YouTube, like before, like this is like when, like, because when YouTube first came out, like everybody was just posting like the craziest shit,
Right. It was a
right?
different,
It was like,
No
what did I
censorship.
just see?
Yeah.
right.
And like there was like this video I saw where this guy was in Missouri, and he had a video camera, and there was like an entrance, you could drive into, like into a cave, like into a limestone cavern. And so he drove in, he like ran in there after, like, like being all sneaky and stuff. He ran in there with the video camera, like while a car was pulling through there. And when he got into the inside, he started doing the camera, and there was like these long roads that went down these long tunnels.
I can take you there. I've been in.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I've been
Yeah,
in
Tyler
and
looked
filmed it.
like.
There's two of them around here. And
Mhm.
if you want, we can go
Yeah.
there afterward.
Show them the video. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll show you the
Or
videos.
go there in
Crazy,
person. Yeah.
man. But
Go
yeah,
there.
so you guys know. I mean,
It
you
it
guys know.
it goes for miles, and I drove
Yeah.
in. The one, says no trespassing, whatever, arrest me. Um,
You
we
just.
uh we
Yeah.
went in there, and it was a Saturday, I think, and there wasn't a soul in sight, and we just started driving around and you can get lost, man. It's massive. And we turn around in fear of like we just want to make sure we can get back out of here.
Yeah.
And
trapped in there. Yeah.
Like all of a sudden the doors lock and you never get
Right,
out.
right.
There was
like, oh,
there was no telling how far it went.
Yeah.
There was no telling how far it went. And there's they use it as cold storage facility for one, like primarily pizza, ironically. And
no.
and then it's the personal record and data center for the entire United States. The archives for everyone's personal records
Whoa.
is stored there. And that part you can't access.
Could
But
see that.
so it's like overt. You can, if you know where it's at, it's kind of off the beaten path, but if you know where it's at, you can drive up to it, and delivery trucks go in and out all day long.
That because in this video that I saw, there was a guy, he was interviewing a trucker who was like, he was like hiding in the shadows, like, 15 years ago. He was like, yeah, I drive semis and I can drive coast to coast under the ground.
Right.
And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows what they're moving under there.
Right.
But this is definitely a big hub. Colorado, I think, is also a big hub. LA, I think, too.
Oh, yeah. Denver is a huge one. Yeah. LA, obviously. St. Louis actually is. Yeah.
So getting back to kind of the music industry and stuff, maybe that you've experienced, have you ever been offered anything? Have you like seen anything at parties or like what kind of stuff happens in those realms?
Like I've never like been like to any of the crazy parties, but I will tell you a story about like I did know, how musicians are, man. We always like try to one up each other on the break. Like, dude, guess what happened at my gig last week? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and I did hear a story about there is a gig that happens in Missouri, and if you want the gig, you do have to wear a blindfold to it. And what goes on there is like you don't know. You don't talk about what goes on there,
Really?
but it's like basically it's just like, what I'm saying?
Wait, you mean if you want to get the gig, you have to go to a party with the blindfold?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want the gig, you have to wear a blindfold and be driven in a car to a place where you get out, and it's it's like an undisclosed location, and when you get there, it's like the most influential people in the state. Wow. They all hang there and have like their own parties and stuff.
It's all Illuminati people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's all the people who are in cahoots. Yeah. Like manipulating all these, different
Bohemian Grove type people. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And like cause like, Missouri is like, it's a crazy place, man. If you go south just like a few hours, or if you go in a few hours, if you go down to the Boot Hill, man, it's like a different world.
Oh, it's a completely different. Yeah.
So you've never been in a position to where you have a production, like a producer ask you to sign a contract?
Yeah, no, I've never been in a position where I've like directly like been offered anything like that, because I think the type of energy that I present is not really in alignment with that, and
right.
I would probably easily
they won't offer it to you because of your energy. Yeah, like
they know.
Yeah. They know. They profile and seek out. They're like, okay, we can't use that guy. We can't get that guy. Oh, that guy we can definitely get. And then they go what they do is they try to they target the people, and then they go, try to manipulate them into coaxing them into.
Right. Or they've been grooming them their whole lives unbeknownst to them.
They've been grooming them. Well, that's why a lot of people, like I think Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears and a lot of these big name musicians are from Illuminati family, and they've been groomed their whole life to do, to be that.
And
they're the perfect,
like Miley Cyrus, man.
Yeah,
Miley Cyrus,
perfect example.
Literally, her life was a TV program. Like her childhood was, she grew up on a TV program where her memories were like the life experiences that she had was like what they programmed her on live TV in front of everyone, like with her dad. And then she like had this dual personality. Like she was like in one life, she was Hannah Montana. And then the other life, she was just Miley Cyrus. and Miley was like the one that she didn't like want to be, right? She wanted to be Hannah Montana. But then like when Miley Cyrus actually got out of the box, you know, a lot of times what those Disney stars will do is to get out of their contracts, because Disney makes them sign like kind of ridiculous contracts that a lot of
Yeah.
times are like not in the favor of the artist, but because the child is so young and the parents are so eager to make money, they'll just be like, okay, sure, yeah, we'll do that, whatever. And then once they become big stars and they realize they did a bad deal, then they usually will start leaking naked pictures and stuff, or like doing scandalous things and getting all kinds of bad press, because they know that, you know, even though Disney is like probably kind of sinister, like at
It is.
at its core, you know,
Right.
and
Oh, it
they
is.
do a good job presenting themselves as the wolf in sheep's clothing, you know.
Well,
Right.
Walt Disney was a 33rd degree Freemason. That's a fact. Like that's a
Yeah.
fact. He
Yeah,
was 30.
there's a club in Disneyland called Club 33.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know,
It costs like,
Masons only club.
and it literally to sign up, you have to pay a $30,000, I think, something like that.
Easily.
30 or
Yeah.
$40,000 to even be a member, become a member.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whatever, you know, whatever I like, you know, hey, that's
Mhm.
a crazy club, but yeah, the Disney thing with the music and the incantations
Mhm.
and real life, you know, magic,
Yeah.
TV programming, like getting everyone kind of predicated to these ideas that like magic and make believe are just fantasies, but then in real life they're like really actually doing the magic like to you while you're watching it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole cabal Illuminati thing, is that they always do this double speak where they tell you one thing, or they tell you something's not real, not true, not blah blah, or even that it's bad, and then on the other hand, they're doing that exact thing to you behind the scenes.
Right.
They do this double speak thing constantly. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just looking now. I saw something the other day about one of the Disney castles, like the castle at one of the Disney worlds burned down. And I'm trying, and there's a whole bunch of stuff about it, but then the number one Google result was it did not burn down. 100 fact check says it was fake, but people on TikTok were showing videos of it literally on fire. So either
It was
the,
on fire, then maybe
yeah.
not burned down. Maybe it was at least on fire.
So yeah, but then like this says here, breaking Cinderella Castle burns to the ground.
Whoa, that's like the main castle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The main castle. And
Wow, maybe.
but what I'm getting at is, I think it was, we just kind of talked about this. Either James Casbolt or Max Spears, one of them talked about the actual Disney castle being a real castle. It's on a ley line intersection, and there's some sort of book or something, some kind of sacred artifact in the top of the castle where they actually go and have rituals. They act in the middle of the park, like, and people just think it's all for decoration, but it's a utilized castle. And let's just pretend that there was something significant up there and there was some sort of attack to burn it. I don't know. We can only speculate. I don't know anything about this, but
That's interesting.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised.
I hope
Very-
nobody was hurt. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I doubt it, because I don't know if people even are
allowed to go in.
yeah,
there.
are people even allowed?
Yeah.
Probably
And then
not.
there's all the information we hear about the child trafficking, the child sex trafficking and stuff that goes on at Disney World, Disneyland, and it's like,
Which there's articles you can read about that have been published, because they allow some of it. What happens is they let some of it slip out. Well, they tell you what they're doing, but they want you to think also, oh, don't worry, this was an isolated incident, and and we caught this guy.
Well,
we took
it-
care of it. Yeah,
It's
they'll do that.
interesting, you know, with this whole Puff Daddy thing. It's like all of a sudden Puff Daddy is getting blamed for everything. You know what I'm saying? He killed Michael Jackson. He killed Biggie. He killed Tupac. Like
It
it's
wasn't
like
him. It was the people above him controlling.
right, but it's like, but what the, you know, the mainstream kind of legacy media or whatever wants us to believe, or like the people who are running the show, it's like they can just, you know, they pick these fall guys or whatever, and they try to pen as much stuff as they can and sweep it under the rug and be like, well, we figured that one out, you know.
Yeah,
and
they
then,
always have their fall guys in place in case anything, or even if they want something to come out.
And
Then to
sometimes
go,
I
oh,
think,
look what this person did. Oh, look what that thing, look what that person did. And meanwhile, it's the very system telling you these like behind it that's doing all these things. But you're never going to see the real people that are, in power. Really, like there's many
Hang on a
insights.
second. And let him. I want to hear what he was going to finish saying.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna, I lost my train of thought, but I
What's
was
that?
just
Are you
gonna,
talking about the fall guy? Like they used to be like
oh,
fall guys.
oh, yeah, I was just basically gonna say that, a good example of that would be Dr. Conrad Murray, the doctor who allegedly, or who was convicted of homicide, not of homicide, but of killing Michael Jackson. Like they didn't give him the death, like they didn't rule it a murder. They ruled it, I forget what they ruled it. They ruled it as a manslaughter. And so he ended up only getting four, like the max penalty for what they gave him was only like 7 years. And like really, like when they looked at the evidence in the toxology report and they looked at the setup and what was happening in his room, and there was a layer that they didn't even dig into when because they would have found out that the contract for the doctor to even be there in the first place was in place by AEG Live, who had a mega insurance policy out on Michael Jackson that was like basically, they were keeping him, like literally the detective in the documentary talking about this case, the LAPD detective prosecutor was saying that it looked from their opinion like Michael Jackson was being kept there, like he was being intentionally sedated and being kept weak. And then like when they opened up, like when they went in his room or whatever, there was like all these like poster boards of little kids and like all this stuff. It just looked super like they planted it
Like they
there.
framed him. Yeah.
Yeah, like they just like, it was like
Yeah.
that just looks fake. Like I don't think anybody would actually have that in their bedroom. Like,
Right.
No.
and like he had this guy Conrad Murray, and so Conrad Murray was in place by AG Live, and so when he died, they pinned it on Conrad Murray, but they already had it worked out with the prosecutors. They're like, "Yo, bro, we're gonna give you all this money, so don't worry about it." And then what's gonna happen is we're gonna get it. We're gonna, on a technicality, we're gonna get it to go for manslaughter versus murder. And then because of that, they basically were able to only give him 4 years in prison and his family was like so mad. Like everybody was so mad. I'm mad. And basically like they once he went in there for good behavior, they let him out after 2 years. And now he's a medical consultant. He's not allowed to practice medicine anymore in the United States, but he's like South African, so he's like in another country, like who knows what. So
Right.
like, and then in the meantime, all the money that was made off Michael Jackson in the wake of his death, and how they basically like they had a contract that they said Mike, they were trying to say that Michael signed over the rights to give Sony, who he despised, and he intentionally, like a lot of people don't know this, but Michael Jackson actually, right before he died, he started saying all this stuff, and it was right when camera phones were just like, they were like not good yet, but there's people who got camera phone recordings of him like saying stuff like Sony is the devil, and calling out the CEO Tony Mottola, and saying that basically, that they were intentionally like slandering him, and they're like destroying his record company and his image on purpose. And they were mad because he was trying to leave and he was trying to move his intellectual property to a different management team, and that was going to cost them millions and billions of dollars, and they weren't going to let it go because of some contractual technicality. So Michael Jackson, what he did was he bought 51% of the shares of Sony. So he became the owner of Sony in order to get back control of his own masters, because he wanted to like leave because he was being like, exploited, and a lot of money was being taken from him.
Yeah.
And so basically like that right there was like, unfortunately, the end for him, because once he announced that he was going to go back on tour, the insurance company of AG Live, they had an insurance policy out on him that was so ridiculous. And his bodyguards and stuff said that when he went to sleep one night. He only had signed up originally to do like 5 shows over like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It was like super spaced out because he wasn't in like he was in good shape and he was doing good, like doing good for 50 years old, but like he wasn't in like I'm gonna do a show every single night for like 3 weeks.
Right.
And and his bodyguards and his nutritionists all said that, and his family members said that. And so he went to bed one night thinking that he was going to be doing like 5 shows. And when he woke up, and like, granted, yeah, he probably was on the drip. Like when he got up, it turned out that they increased the shows to like 20 shows. And he felt bad because he didn't want to disappoint his fans. And they caught him in this hard place. But when you look at it in hindsight, you're like, wait a second, this is so easy to see. AEG Live hired Dr. Conrad Murray to keep Michael Jackson sedated and to have the in on him so that they could intentionally kill him, and then they buy out all the LA like government people that they would need to make sure that he would be okay. And then they collected the insurance policy money from Michael Jackson's death because they and then they increased all the right before he died, they increased all the numbers of shows so that way the insurance policy would be like even higher. And when you look at it, you're just like, man, like
Perfect
what
recipe.
is really going on here? And it's all the paperwork is like all there.
Yeah, the perfect recipe, unfortunately. And yeah, the Michael Jackson thing that, there's all kinds of theories about he didn't actually die and he's still alive and all this stuff. And who knows, but
they put that guy
he wasn't even
in jail
actually,
like he killed him, so
right.
Well, there's theories that he was not actually a pedophile, but he just knew about the pedophilia and child abuse sex stuff going on, and he wanted to come out about it, but so what they did was they threw him under the bus and blasted out that he was a pedophile.
Well,
that's what they do, right? They project onto you what they're doing.
So, Daryl James, this former Navy guy we've interviewed, and his executive officer, he asked about Michael Jackson one time, and his executive officer told him, because they know a lot in the upper echelons of the military, especially in St. Maughan. He was at a Royal Air Force Base. And he said that he asked, he's like, is all the stuff true about Michael Jackson? And he said, no, but the stuff that he did do, he was forced to do. If he did anything, he was forced to do. He didn't want to do it.
Forced.
It wasn't who he was. Like that wasn't who he was. But so anything that he might have done, it wasn't his decision, right?
It probably does seem like there's a level of like, especially back in the day, like there was probably like this is the way it is. Like if you don't do this, then like you don't get in the club, and if you don't get in the club, then you might end up dead.
Or
because now you know too much.
Or he was just legitimately drugged and doesn't have even memory of doing stuff, which is what happens too.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like that's what we all want to see. I mean, right? They went and seized all Puff Daddy's tapes and all the evidence and stuff, and it's like, do you really think we're ever gonna see like a pinky's finger worth of that stuff? Like, no, probably not. They'll show us a couple things that create a narrative that they want to see.
We're still waiting on all the Epstein stuff. I mean, it's not. Yeah.
Like how could they literally just like do that to us? You know what I mean? It's like it was all this big smoking gun, like the biggest names in Hollywood, the biggest names in politics, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, never mind.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Never mind.
Well,
forget about that.
The thing is whether or not we hear about anything publicly, like these people still have to look over their shoulders for the rest of their lives. They're not living happily if they even ever were in the first place. But it's still energetically, if you're going to zoom out and look at this in a higher perspective, it still is coming to the surface. People are still hearing about it, whether or not we get like justice. I still think that it is making a difference. It is making an impact. The collective consciousness understanding that this happens is what's going to dismantle it.
Absolutely.
Like the 100th monkey effect. Eventually, enough people are going to understand it happens, and like maybe like P. Diddy was like domino number one, right? But there's a number of people right now that are still being exposed. And like Cat Williams said, 2024 is a year of exposure.
Oh yeah, man.
And it's just literally the dominoes are falling right now. And people, like, there's enough evidence like the PDD stuff, that case was released, those documents were released. So you might not hear about it, but you can go read about it. And there's enough evidence for people to actually start believing that this stuff is real.
It's real, man.
And then that's where the change occurs when enough people understand. So
well, like if it's coming out of all things, like if there's all these different people in all different places that are kind of like seem kind of not connected on the surface, like then it's like, wait a second, if we're getting the same information from multiple sources that appear to be independent, then like we should probably look at this.
right.
Right. Exactly. It only appears to be on a very surface level separate, but it doesn't take even that much research, especially nowadays. It's becoming more obvious than ever before. You can see the like entity where it's like all these things are coming out of, right? You can see how it's all one system, that the music industry, the political, the banking, the education,
right.
even in the military, like the court system, it's all the same dark control system embedded in every institution and controlling everything. But they're on their way out, and that's why everything's being exposed and people are waking up and taking their power back. But
Right.
it's becoming so obvious now, and
Yep.
they can't continue controlling when this many people are awake, because the jig is up now, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're now seeing it finally.
Well, like the desperation, the moves are so desperate now. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like it's like the last. I feel like it's like the finale. Like when you go to the fireworks show and it's like all the at the end and just like boom, 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 boom.
Right.
It's like
right, exactly.
It's like we're gonna have a war in the Middle East, and we're gonna like we're gonna like we're like gonna cause tension politically. We're gonna cause tension about social issues. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna like
burn these buildings
down.
Yeah.
Right. We're gonna like create a mass event.
We're gonna take this bridge out.
Right. Yeah.
We're gonna shut the whole world down and say that there's a deadly virus that's
right.
kill you if you don't stay in your house for the next 8 months.
Out of a lab. Like it was clearly we created the virus, and then we go, oh, we'll save you from the virus that we literally created and intentionally released.
What is that? I like the problem reaction solution.
Yeah.
Right. That's
problem reaction solution. David Icke and
David Icke, man, 101.
Right.
They create the problem. Then they go, oh, we'll save you from the problem that we literally created, and do the thing they wanted to do all along. And they just keep doing that.
Right. Yeah. So,
but the jig is up now. We're seeing it, and we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not going to agree to do those things anymore. Not going to support that.
So is there any final words you'd like to leave us with before we start to wrap this up?
Just like, I guess like in the nature of like music, just being intentional about consumption. If everybody like realizes that like, the nature of the dark force and the light force is kind of like always existing in a duality. So the thing that's going to determine our perspective is our perception, or like where we choose to like attune or focus our conscious. And while there is like a lot of dark energy, and the dark energy is definitely kind of in control of maybe what's most available or what's most popular, and that seems to be the case for most industries and most institutions. The key, I think, is to really be disciplined in your diet of music listening to ensure that the music that you're putting into your conscious is empowering you with the types of ideals or the types of energy or the emotions that you are finding useful in your experience. Not to say that you can't have a wide spectrum of genres or a wide spectrum of topics, but just to make sure that you're intentional about why you're consuming that music, how that music like has an effect on you, and also like when you play music, being aware of like the effects that it has on everything, like and everywhere, and just being more conscious about and intentional, and really taking time to appreciate music, and to realize that everything is music, and to understand that like at a fundamental level there's a science called cymatics, and cymatics is like to understand reality, it's like is to understand cymatics. Like when cymatics uh is talked about, it's usually not in a classroom in high school. You know what I'm saying? It's not usually a science that you're familiar with, like say you would study like biology or environmental or like the animal kingdom, right? But
Right.
like
They
when
don't
did
want
we
us
ever
knowing about those types of things. They don't. There's a reason things like that are not taught in school.
Right.
You know.
100%. And so I would just encourage everybody to learn more about the effects of sound on matter because it literally has the physical power, the tangible, scientific, provable power to change the world. And I think when we, as consumers, take our power back and choose to invest our dollars, you know, and our time and our attention and our thoughts and our focus into the type of world that we want to have versus like spending all of our time like trying to figure out why, like just trying to prove to ourselves that like there's a lot of dark shit out here and I don't like it. You know what I mean? Like there's like a balance that I'm constantly finding in myself as a songwriter, you know, where it's like I'll have a song that, you know, maybe is more charged with light and peace and unity and bringing people together and it's sunshine and rainbows, you know. And then I'll maybe have another song that's maybe more like truthful and maybe talks more about conspiracy or maybe like you know says fuck or like you know what I'm saying like just like kind of is maybe for people who need to become more aware or need to be challenged in their thoughts. And I think a lot of times as an artist, your responsibility isn't so much to tell people what the truth is. It's to like give them the opportunity to like see the truth for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's like there's this great line for V for Vendetta, which is one of my favorite movies.
Great
And
movie.
V says that artists use lies to tell the truth. And I think, you know, in the spirit of my music, that there's like a lot of that. It's not like a lie in the sense that you're trying to like hurt somebody. It's just that you might manufacture a story like much like you would an allegory or a myth to try to express a you know a principle or an idea or a happening or an allegory or something,
Right.
you know. And that's really where my music sits. It sits between jazz, pop, hip hop. I'm very Socratic in my lyricism. I'm very positive. I'm very much about community and collaboration and bringing communities together and healing people through the power of music. I also make lo-fi chill hop meditation music under the branding The Lotus Journey, and I'm about to release an album with my good friend Stella Lumina. It's called Symphony of Good. It'll be coming out on 5/22 on the High Vibes record label. We're very excited about this reissue. And I also like, you know, have just been creating a lot of, as I said, you know, kind of music that deals with the times and of today and a little more social narrative and social commentary. And I'll be putting that out. I'm about to do a whole kind of rebrand and start releasing music under the name of Conscious Keys, which has been my business name or my Instagram handle at Conscious Keys, that I've kind of used for the last however long, you know,
So,
Instagram's been out.
so where can people find your music right now?
If you go to ryanmarquez.com, you can find my music right now. If you go to uh Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and you type in Ryan Marquez, you'll find a whole bunch of music. You can, if you like jazz, you can put Ryan Marquez Trio. If you want to check out some of my pop stuff, you can look up The Belief Cycle or Fresh Air. I have another band called The People's Key. Like I play with a lot of, you know, I just produced the album with Anita Michelle Jackson. Like I played on a record last year with Janet Evra. Like I stay active in a lot of different genres. So whether you like jazz or you like pop or you like house or if you like, I did an album called Who Is He with an artist, Dylan Triplett, that won a Blues Music Award last year. That, you know, is out there. So
Awesome.
You can find me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's incredible. I'm gonna check. Definitely want to check out your music for sure.
And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing everything with us and teaching us about the Veiled Prophet and all your experience. It was really great, and it's kind of a cool format to actually have somebody here in person. So it's always nice to run into somebody local, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, guys. I absolutely have enjoyed it, and hope to come back again sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
amazing.
And to the audience out there, we would love to see you at our event. It is right around the corner, and tickets are still available, rebelsofdisclosure.com. And we can't wait to see you there. And yeah, check out the sunglasses. Nice. Good night, everybody. We love you. And until next time, have a great evening.
When all is lost, nothing works. Life is tough, it all hurts. Take the fight, it's time to burn. Just stand still, destruction. When all is lost, nothing works. Life is tough, it all hurts. Take the fight, it's time to burn. Just stand still, destruction.
The universe may end, worlds might collide. Nuclear bombs could explode, it could mean your life. It's red alert on Judgment Day. These the end times, you better start praying. It's imminent mayhem as reality breaks down. It's a predictable cadence, the orbit of ignorance. It's a test of your patience while they circle the bases. Got you trapped in a stasis. Relax, they know we're the greatest. There's a legend among us, and there's no stopping the onus.
When all is lost, nothing works. Life is tough, it all hurts. Take the fight, it's time to burn. Just stand still, destruction.
It's prime time for the world to end. You gotta leave back seats and unlimited tickets. It's apparent the tide is turning. Any day could be the next returning. How many mega disasters does it take before we realize it's manipulated? The matrix is the basics. The internet's a Seamus. Rome wasn't built in a day, and the pyramids weren't made by slaves. It's artificial intelligence, first the aliens, first the rest of us. It doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, or what you've done. This world will end, and you can't run. It's the nature of the human condition. For everything that ends begins a new infinite experience. An infinite rabbit hole, sometimes difficult to navigate. With centripetal motion, blast out with propulsion of a circular notion. You're a conscious drop in the ocean.
When all is lost, nothing works. Life is tough, it all hurts. Take the fight, it's time to burn. Just stand still, destruction. When all is lost, nothing works. Life is tough, it all hurts. Take the fight, it's time to burn. Just stand still, destruction.
The time bomb's exploding and space is corroding. There's a new experience beyond the realms of perceived limits, where intangible depth transcends physical wealth. Find a fountain of youth in your spiritual health. Enlightenment is the effort of the third eye to open and align with the intelligent design that is infinitely divine. Efforts forever have been taught, but will never ever be comprehended by mental stats or logistical cleverness. It's allegorical obligation to remind you of the symbolic nature artists have forever integrated into the masterpieces they've created. Worlds will fall, it all will change in an effortless creation of infinite space. Celebrate the day with enlightening ways.
When all is lost,